Keir Starmer's leadership faces its most explosive crisis yet, and it's the kind of scandal that leaves even the most loyal Labour supporters with a bitter taste in their mouths. Leaked documents have surfaced, exposing the Labour Party's acceptance of a staggering £4 million donation from Quadridge Capital, a hedge fund with deep investments in fossil fuels, private healthcare, and arms manufacturing. Ostensibly, the money was meant to help Labour achieve its climate goals, but the revelation has kicked up a storm of ethical questions. How can a party that pledges to fight for climate justice accept millions from the very industries it claims threaten our future? Labour has always sold itself as the party of the people, defenders of public service, champions for the environment, and guardians of honesty in politics. When Starmer took the reins, he promised a new era of transparency and a decisive break from the shadow of corporate influence. He lambasted conservative cronyism and vowed Labour would stand shoulder to shoulder with ordinary people, not big business. But now, his party stands accused of cozying up to the same elite financial forces it once condemned. For many, this is not just a political slip, it's a fundamental betrayal of Labour's roots. What's making this even more combustible is the timeline. The donation wasn't declared until after the general election. It was kept hidden during the most critical phase of Labour's campaign, denying voters the chance to scrutinize the party's integrity before casting their ballots. This wasn't a simple error. It was a deliberate choice, one that undermines every promise of accountability Starmer ever made. The party that insisted it would never deceive the public did just that, all while vowing to tear down the old ways of doing politics. But the story doesn't end with a secret check. Reports suggest Quadridge's donation was more than just generous, it was strategic. Within weeks of Labour's victory, subtle yet unmistakable shifts began to emerge in its policies. Climate commitments were watered down. NHS reforms that had won Labour support on the doorstep began to stall. Defence spending quietly ticked upward. Critics argue this was not a coincidence, but the fingerprints of donor influence at work. Quadridge Capital is no ordinary investor. It's a secretive, Cayman Islands-based operation with hefty stakes in ExxonMobil and Suez Energy, two companies notorious for their role in the global climate crisis. Labour's bold green pledges are now cast in shadow. Since forming a government, Labour has delayed green infrastructure projects and scaled back on renewable energy investments. Environmental groups are up in arms. The party once hailed as a climate leader now risks being seen as a willing partner to polluters. But the implications go even deeper. Quadridge also owns considerable shares in arms manufacturing giants like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, companies with lengthy records of supplying authoritarian regimes and profiting from war. Under Starmer, Labour has quietly increased military spending and pulled back from promised scrutiny of defence contractors. The party that once championed diplomacy and peace now appears to be embracing the priorities of the arms industry. The scandal even reaches the NHS, the institution at the heart of Labour's moral identity. Quadridge's portfolio includes major private healthcare corporations, companies that stand to benefit as the NHS comes under strain. With waiting lists growing and funding gaps widening, Labour has leaned ever more on private providers to prop up public services. Reforms promised during the campaign have slowed to a crawl, while the party talks up the role of private partners. This isn't pragmatic politics, critics say. It's a capitulation to the very interests Labour was founded to oppose. When you step back, a troubling pattern emerges. Labour's refusal to introduce tougher oversight of private healthcare, its silence on arms profiteering, its backpedaling on climate change, all align with the interests of its newest, wealthiest donor. The message to voters is clear. Promises are flexible, but donor influence is absolute. The £4 million donation was not just a windfall, it was a ticket to the corridors of power. Labour's policies are starting to echo the desires of its richest backers, not the needs of ordinary people. What we're seeing isn't a party adapting for the future, it's one losing its soul for financial survival. For voters who believed in a better, fairer, cleaner politics, the sense of betrayal is unmistakable. Labour promised to change the system, but it's starting to look more and more like the status quo it once vowed to dismantle. If this trend continues, Labour won't just lose the moral high ground, it risks losing the trust of the very public it was meant to serve. And in politics, trust isn't just important, it's everything.